Hello, this is Dr. Kalman Andrassy, and today I'm going to be talking about ethnographic research, which is the process by which researchers go into the natural settings of the group or the culture or the subculture about which they are conducting their research, and really try to really enter the social world of the people that they're working with. Okay, so let's start with the term ethnography. The term itself comes from the uh, the Greek for cultural writing. So it's ultimately all about trying to examine the culture of the groups that one is examining and essentially writing about it. So the idea is that the researcher is going in to kind of describe culture with regard to the social, the political, the economic, the religious, uh, family life, and things like that of members of the group, and also working with important cultural artifacts of that group. And like with previous types of qualitative research, one's able to produce both a thin and a thick description of what's going on in the context of those types of groups. So, an ethnography is really useful if your research question really requires an in-depth understanding of the social context of a particular culture. So, when we're looking at the behaviors of a group, when we're talking about questions of how individuals in a group, view the world around them, how members of a culture really understand their customs or their behaviors, or when a story of a group is an important focus of research. Okay, so it tends to be very interpretive in its approach. Attempts to kind of describe social phenomena. You can take a more positivistic kind of an approach and test out hypotheses. It's even useful for things like social and political activism to really come to understand a group that may otherwise be marginalized or considered to have less power than some sort of a dominant group. Now, the big issue in ethnographic research is that it can be very difficult or even impossible to conduct the research if the researcher does not have access to the group that's being observed. So, this is one of those cases where finding gatekeepers and things like that, individuals who can get you into a group and sort of vouch for you as as a person and as a researcher, that could be very useful to being able to accomplish your goals in conducting ethnographic research. So the primary way in which ethnographic research is conducted is through participant observation, where you're trying to observe some aspect of social life of the members of the group that you're looking at, and really coming to an understanding of the social interactions that are there. Okay, it's often called field work, where you're ultimately developing a first-person account of whatever group it is that you're exploring within its natural setting, and you're trying to ultimately discover behaviors and attitudes and beliefs that were previously unknown. Okay. Now, in terms of keeping track of that sort of information, most individuals conducting ethnographic work in the field use field notes, to basically write down their accounts of everyday experiences. Uh, these can be on the fly notes, things that you write as you're kind of working through things. It can be, more in the form of thick descriptions to try to understand what's going on in the social context. And the idea is that you're trying to collect data and interpret that data kind of as you go. And the field notes really allow you to keep track of new information and really think about what elements of the group kind of fit together and work thematically, so you can really come to a holistic, complete understanding of the group. And as with a lot of qualitative processes, you probably want to continue to collect your data until you reach a saturation point where basically no new data is coming in because you've already covered all that information at some point previously. Okay? We're also going to be talking about content analysis in the next video, but content analysis is a big part of ethnographic research as well because you're looking at communication artifacts and trying to determine any patterns of behavior that might emerge by looking at the way in which individuals communicated experiences through stories or writings or even images or any type of really archaeological kind of content could be potentially useful in coming to an understanding of how a group operates. Okay? Now, what's important to kind of consider in the context of an ethnographic research study is just how involved you're going to be in the overall process. A researcher can become a complete observer and try very hard to refrain from interacting with the group, hopefully being able to keep his or her identity completely hidden. A person could be an observer as participant, where the researcher does reveal their identity, but their interactions with the group are limited to be as minimalistic as possible. Next, you have the participant as observer, where the researcher fully engages in the activities and the customs of the group. Members of the group are completely aware of the fact that the person's a researcher, but the idea that they're being fully integrated into the group allows you to build some trust and openness, which may be beneficial in some regards, but it can also lead to a loss of objectivity in the approach of the topic. And then, of course, the final way you can kind of present yourself is as a complete participant, where you're fully engaged and you don't necessarily reveal your identity as a researcher. So you're able to achieve trust, you're able to achieve openness, but of course you have potential problems because you may be conducting covert research, which in turn opens the door to some ethical problems potentially, as far as informed consent and things like that in participation. So, the whole purpose behind a ethnographic research study is to really try to find all the nuances and kind of the ins and outs of a group or a culture, and to really get a complete really whole picture of the way that group operates and the way the group interacts with one another and with outsiders. So, kind of keep that in mind in your approach and how you're going to try to get the information that you want. A classic example of an ethnographic research study would be to go to some sort of a music club that maybe has like some sort of a subculture, like the punk subculture or the goth subculture or something like that. And you can kind of go in there, hang out on the wall as sort of a observer, as participant. You could get in there maybe on the dance floor and talk to people, saying that you're a researcher, that you want to learn more about the particular subculture, possibly going in there and not saying anything about the research that you're conducting, and just dancing the night away and socializing with people in that context, and kind of taking notes afterward as a complete participant. Or if you can maybe find your way into like a secluded DJ booth or something like that, that's hidden away from the rest of the group. Maybe you could even do a complete observer kind of an approach to coming to an understanding of what's going on. So ethnographic research, I think, is one of the more challenging ones, but it can also be a very good means of collecting very strong quality data about the groups that you're conducting research on. And quite frankly, it can be kind of fun, depending on the type of group that you work with. So with that, I urge you to see the next video on content analysis to get a little bit more background on that aspect of ethnographic research. And also, kind of consider the fact that ethnographic research can also be a case study, which is also the topic of discussion in the next video.